appreciate what you're doing to oversee this, and thanks for what you're doing as commissioner. And again, really appreciate all the great stuff we got to accomplish when you were president of the Florida Senate. We've been able to do a lot over these last 5 years, and we're going to do a lot more in the upcoming weeks with the legislative session. Now, knowing I was coming here, I went over with my kids last night the new fair food for this year's fair in 2024. And so, and I don't know whether that was smart or not, but I did. And so I am now tasked with bringing back to my 3-year-old a Barbie funnel cake. So if you can point me in the right direction on that, we're going to do it. I've got to get my other 2 kids who actually came with us. They want to try the Oreo cookie cinnamon bun, which I'm sure is probably pretty good. And then I started looking for me, and I said, you know, I'm pretty intrigued by this Florida quesadilla. It's a quesadilla, but instead of chicken or beef, it's got gator nuggets in it. So I am going to do a Florida quesadilla. And we know that there's a lot of classics that'll be at the fair, the turkey legs, the deep fried Oreos, the elephant ears, as well as the great exhibits and the entertainment and the rides. I'm going to be doing a little bit of a spin with my 2 oldest here, and we're looking forward to being able to do that, and I think it's going to be very, very successful. You know, as the commissioner mentioned, we're in good shape in the state of Florida. You got to look around the country, and I've had a chance to visit some other places. There's some states that are struggling. We're doing very, very well. He mentioned our debt. So Florida, we have the lowest debt per capita now in the entire United States amongst all 50 states. Since 2019, we've paid down 25% of our state's debt. We're on track, if you look at just the taxpayer-supported debt, to knock off a huge percentage more over the next 3 years, and we're going to work on rolling that out at the right time. So we're happy about that. The federal debt, on the other hand, is now $34 trillion. And so if you calculated what is your share as an American citizen of our nation's federal debt, and it's over $100,000 per U.S. citizen. Now in Florida, as a Floridian, what is your share of the state of Florida's debt? And it's about $600 per Floridian, and actually declining every day, not just because we're paying it off, because as we have more net in-migration, then that takes the share down. Now, not that you'd ever have to pony up the $600, but it's like, you know, this is something that's manageable and sustainable over the long term going forward. Our budget, to put in perspective how we do things, and you know, Commissioner Simpson can talk about some of the things that we did when he was in the Senate, some of the things we're going to do this year in terms of investing in things that matter, whether it's education, environmental stewardship, transportation, and infrastructure. You know, we've done some really, really big things. Yet, with all that being said, we've been paying down debt, running surpluses, cutting taxes. And right now, the closest state to us population-wise is New York. But we actually have millions of more people than New York does. We may even have some people here who used to be citizens of New York who moved here. That's not uncommon to see in this state. And yet, even though we have millions of more people than New York State, our budget is half the size of their budget. But you know, when people come here from there, what do they tell me? Oh my gosh, your roads are nicer, your services are better, your education system's better. So we're able to actually do the things that matter, but we're doing it with half the footprint. And not only half the budget, if you look at the total number of state government workers, we have the lowest amount of state workers per capita in the entire United States. So talk about a small, manageable government. So it just shows you, if we're able to do these things with that footprint, how much money do these governments waste of taxpayers every single year, from Washington, D.C. to all these other state capitals. And, you know, nobody likes paying taxes, but when you're paying taxes for things that you know they're just going to fritter it away, you can see why people flee these jurisdictions and come to Florida. So we're proud of what we've been able to do with that, working with the legislature, and that's good for each legislative session because you're able to do things and it's manageable. But I think even more important than that, look ahead 10, 15, 20, 25 years. I think we're built to do very, very well over this period of time as long as we continue sound leadership. And you look at the rankings. I mean, we were ranked #1 economy by CNBC. We were ranked #1 in new business formations. I think every year for like the last 5 years, the state of Florida is ranked #1 in that. #1, of course, in net in-migration in the Tampa Bay area. You know, you guys see that every day of people that are moving. And look, as governor, I am not asking people to move to Florida. Like, there's some governors, they'll like beg people to go to their states. I'm not even asking businesses to move. A lot of times the businesses will call us and ask, like, how can we get to Florida because they're being treated poorly in so many of these other jurisdictions. So we're not out doing that because, you know, look, I think there's been benefits, but there's also challenges and some of the things that you have to do. But nevertheless, we're #1 in net in migration yet again, and that is a very important data point because ultimately people vote with their feet. And if they're willing to pick up their entire life and move halfway across the country or even all across the country to come to Florida, that's a statement and that says something. Commissioner Simpson mentioned we are ranked #1 in education by U.S. News and World Report, and part of that is because of what we've been able to do with supporting parental choice in education for K-12, some of the focus on early literacy, which is important, but also our higher education is the most affordable in the entire United States. You can go as an in-state tuition to our universities, and you're paying the same tuition that you paid 10 years ago at the universities. I mean, so in a high inflation environment, which we've experienced, and then with higher ed inflation has been raging for decades, the state of Florida, it's like turn back the clock day. You're paying the exact same. So that's affordable for people, and I think that's one of the reasons why we've done well. And then also we're #1 for education freedom, #1 for parental involvement in education, and those are really, really important, and we're proud of it. I can tell you this, though, when people come to Florida now, you ask them why, and you know, yes, taxes, but we've always had lower taxes than these other states. Yes, there was certainly a major COVID wave in 2020, 21, 22, where they were fleeing some of these bizarre policies in these other states, no question about that. But if you talk to a lot of folks, one of the things they will say is they came to Florida because of our emphasis on public safety. You just don't see that in many parts of the country anymore like you should. You had some areas, some cities that used to be very, very orderly and have low crime like New York City. They reversed those policies that got them to that point, and now they've had trouble. You've seen attacks on law enforcement where they've tried to cut budgets across the force. We've really just done the opposite here in Florida. I mean, our view is simple. You know, if you commit crimes, you're going to be held accountable. We're not just going to put you back on the street and let you commit more crimes. We're going to stand by the people that wear the uniform because we know it's important work, and we want them to be able to do their job knowing they have the backing of their communities. And part of the reason that I think we're in where we are is because we have embraced proper policies. We've had a lot of people that have worked very hard at our sheriff's departments with Chad and his deputies, all the other 60, well, I guess 65 of the counties, and soon to be Miami-Dade when they're going to get their sheriff. Police departments, our state agencies have all worked really, really hard, but we've put our money where our mouth is on this. When we started to see the defunding of police departments across the country a few years ago, we responded working with the legislature to say, okay, we're not going to do that, but we're going to do even better. We're going to pass legislation to ensure that no local government is allowed to get away with doing that in the state of Florida, and so we protected that to where we'd be able to go refund if necessary. And then we did 3 years in a row, we did $1,000 bonuses for every single sworn law enforcement officer, firefighter, and EMT in the entire state of Florida. And that's meaningful because that's a lot of people. We had to make sure that we were, dedicating a pretty decent chunk of money for that. But when people see me about that, yeah, they like it. And we structured it so that you got $1,000 in your pocket after taxes. So the check was for like $1,300 or something like that. And that's meaningful, especially when prices have gone up over the last few years. But ultimately, no one's going to be retiring on a $1,000 bonus. I think more importantly than the economic impact was just the fact that if someone's getting this letter in the mail from the state of Florida with this check, that's showing that the state of Florida has your back. That's saying that the state of Florida, believes in what you're doing and you have support in your community. We added to that by doing a $5,000 officer recruitment bonus program. So part of that is for people here, young people in Florida. If they choose to go into law enforcement, they're eligible for a $5,000 signing bonus right off the top. When we're recruiting officers from places like New York and Chicago and California, and we've done a lot over the last few years, they come in knowing they get a $5,000 bonus, right off the top. I know Chad has used that bonus to recruit people. I can just tell you this. Since we've done this program and really worked on recruiting police officers into the state of Florida, every single one I've talked to is glad that they made the move, and I have not met one person that has regretted coming to the state of Florida. And so I think that says something about the type of folks that we have. So we're going to continue to support those recruitment policies. Also going to make sure that we don't let Florida fall into some of the traps that you've seen some of these other states and cities fall into. Some of these areas like San Francisco, they have to close the stores because there's so much crime. We're going to be working with the legislature to actually go in the opposite direction and make sure that we're holding people engaged in retail theft accountable so that we don't let that happen in the state of Florida. Also, the same thing with what you see in some of these cities where you've had just massive homeless take over public streets and areas where it's really impinged on the quality of life. That is not appropriate. We need to have open and clean streets, and that should be the norm in every community in this state, and we're going to make sure that happens when we're doing with the upcoming legislative session. But public safety, understanding the need so that people can do their jobs, send their kids to school without having to worry about all the madness that we see all around the rest of the country. Also, just would like to point out, Florida is a huge agriculture state, and I think some people know like the citrus and whatnot, but when you travel out of state, people just think of Florida as like South Beach, right? And I try to tell them, I'm like, we're one of the biggest cattle states in the country, and that doesn't compute. All the different things that we do in this state sometimes goes underreported, but we realize what an important industry it is. One of the threats, I think, that we're looking at, and we've taken action in Florida, is you have this whole movement called ESG now, environment, social governance, and what they're doing is they're basically taking businesses, major corporations, Wall Street banks, asset managers, a lot of money at stake here, and they're coming together and saying, well, we're only going to do business with people that abide by these ESG criteria, so that means kneecapping fossil fuels, it means kneecapping Second Amendment rights. There's a whole agenda at play here, and one of their targets is agriculture. They believe that agricultural practices are a big driver of global warming, and they want to be able to target that to basically change the way people are doing this. Now, that will not end well. That will create a farm crisis in this country. So in Florida, we've actually leaned in against the ESG. We said, we have a great state, a massive market. If we were our own country, we would be the 13th largest economy in the world. Come have at it. But, we're not going to let you impose an agenda on the backs of our residents that's going to be harmful to people's rights, to people's freedoms, and certainly to some of our key industries. And so folks in the agriculture industry here in Florida can know, as long as I'm governor, we're going to push back against this insanity because it will absolutely ruin agriculture in this country if we let it get out of hand. And I think we've had a lot of success. You've seen a lot of retreating on this from there. And look, part of this is these are bad policies that I don't think are in the best interest of the state or for the country for that matter. But I think there's a larger question. You know, we're supposed to decide a lot of these issues of public policy through elections and through a constitutional system. Is it a substitute to just have 5 big banks and 5 big asset managers just come together and decide they have their imprint on society and they're just going to impose it without our consent? And what are we supposed to do? Just sit there and not do anything? No, in Florida, we're fighting back and we're winning this fight. So that's something we're going to continue to work hard on because we know how important it is. I think this is great that we're doing this yet again. I think it's been a great number of years. I mean, I remember us bouncing back from COVID, and there were areas where they were not allowed to have anything going on, and we had back to life and did very, very well. So I hope everybody takes time to enjoy the fair. I've got my grocery list of things I've got to bring back to Tallahassee tonight, and I know that when I bring that Barbie funnel cake home to my 3-year-old daughter and she eats it after dinner, that I am not going to get her in bed on time. Thank you all. God bless you. Appreciate it.